part 3, Restoring Men in History. This is part 3 of the Whitney Webb Peter McCormick one, because she's on the side of freedom. We're on the side of freedom. We want you men to have opportunity, and to have opportunity, you need freedom. Again, how was TikTok sold? For your children, right? They always sell this as for your children. And then look at the trans movement from the same people. Following all your transactions. Imagine them knowing everything every time you spend. No digital currency, no digital ID. If you like our message, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. We would appreciate it. Clip number 9.
They don't want anyone to have financial privacy or online privacy anymore. And that's what part of this agenda about a regulated internet is. And it directly ties in with stuff like a central bank digital currency, at least what people are concerned about a CBDC for, which is the surveillance capability and the programmability aspect. It's all tied up with this effort to regulate the internet, which isn't really fair to say it's regulating the internet. It's more like taking complete control of the internet, a complete coup of the internet for unprecedented surveillance and control of people's online lives. At the same time that you have these same entities pushing for people to live their lives online as much as possible, as part of the fourth industrial revolution and all of this other stuff. Like we saw in the COVID era, we're locking down. You can't go out and do stuff in the physical world. You have to be online as much as possible. Education's online. Work is online. As much of your life as possible has to be online now because you can't go in person to the bank. You can't go in person to this. You should order your groceries through your phone and all of this stuff, So they're pushing us more and more into the digital realm, and at the same time preparing to take more control of the digital realm than they have now by a significant degree. And that's not a coincidence. I'm sorry if you think that's coincidental. That's very naive of you.
Let me just ask you something. So on this, I'm following the path of everything you're saying and agreeing and recognizing it's coming. I always try and think, why? Why has it happened? Is it an organic system of bad incentives which appeal to the greed of certain individuals that drive us towards these bad decisions, like the centralization and control of power? Mm-hmm. Or is it some evil plan? Is it malice? Is it... Yeah, I try and understand, and I always come out on the side of thinking, but it's just a system of poor incentives, the way humans are, the way we act, our greed that drives us towards this. But is there a deep state of malice?
Well, okay, so obviously when you're talking about the powers that be, there's competing factions, right? Not all of them agree, but they agree about a lot of the stuff. And a lot of the way these people operate isn't that similar to how rulers operated hundreds of years ago. They want complete and control of money and political power and power more broadly, because then they can do whatever they want for themselves and have a double standard for themselves, but force other people to live a certain way to support their lifestyle.
So she's talking about a coup of the internet, or really internet control and power over whom? Over you, your privacy, at the same time, surveilling you. That's just bad. Pushing you to live also, have you noticed this? During COVID, what did they do? They pushed you to live your life on the internet. Stay home. Don't get out in the sun. Don't exercise. Don't go to the gym. Don't do anything. Remember what they tried and did to you. They'll do it bigger next time. They're not done. They're not finished. Very smart people behind them. Locking you down, cutting you off. What does that do? Easier to create mass psychosis when you cut everybody off from each other. Have friends, have deep relationships in your area that you can get to. Pushing you out of friendship and community, out of your churches, out of wherever you wanted to go, away from your friends. Don't forget it. And of course, they're double standard, only for you, not for them, depending on which way you want to look at it. Only they get to have fun, not you. Only you have to wear the mask, not them. They can do anything, you will be subjects. Arbitrary law, right? Not rule of law, rule of man. Do what we say. Let's go to clip 10.
When you bring the financial system back, what do these people, people like Jamie Dimon and all these top bankers, what is their ideal scenario for money? and how people interact with and use money. Well, being able to grift as much as you want and take as much as you want from the people under you without them knowing or complaining, because I mean, that's what they've been doing for decades, right? Wall Street. So they want to keep doing that. They don't want to change their behavior. So they want to find a way to be able to steal from the underclass as much as possible without the underclass complaining or revolting, and control how they spend their money. And control their financial and other behavior so that they can maintain their place on the top. So what we're having is the engineering of a neo-feudal society where you have the small upper class and then a massive underclass that the upper class can manipulate and control and do whatever they want with as they see fit. And so that's what I think the ambition of a lot of these various initiatives we're seeing for unprecedented control and surveillance are aimed at. And the goal is to use technology, whether it's AI or any of these other emerging technologies, to be able to do that, because obviously there's so much more of us than there are of them. And so in order to scale what they want to scale, to be able to deal with the huge difference in size between their class and our class, they feel like they need these emerging technologies. They need AI, and that's why I see AI as a largely negative thing, because the people that want to do this are the ones setting it up and programming it and deciding what its objectives are.
So we always say this: who's to program AI and give it direction? Who's going to be programming it? 2008. We talk about this all the time. I called it too corrupt to fail, not too big to fail. All those guys did this action, ruined a lot of people's lives, people lost their homes, lost their savings, had less opportunity to go get a job. Just coming out of college, you can't get a job. 35 trillion now, unsustainable, and making everybody poorer with inflation. And who is paid? Who has been held accountable? No one that I know of. Too corrupt to fail. The case for limited government was made by the government. $35 trillion in debt. There should never be a tax increase. And they need to be reduced to their enumerated powers only. Now, she talks about if you're the banks and you're in bed with intelligence, and if you own the central bank, how do you come up and blame someone else? So that what we're looking at here is next time when it happens, that you can identify it. The banks don't want to be blamed again, she's saying, and this is more her. And she talks about how do you interact, being able to grift and take. They've been doing it for decades, she says. They steal from the underclass they control the financial behavior, and they want to maintain their place. Now, she gets in a word we've used before, neo-feudal society. Upper class, manipulate and control, create a perpetual lower class. How do you get into the elite? She talks about, and she's pretty harsh. She says they cultivate psychopaths anyway, ruling the elite like the Dark Ages. Centralized control of info and money, though, is what we're really worried about here today. We want you to have your privacy. We want you to be able to control your information and have your own money and control your money. And that's really what it's about, freedom. Now, but she says they're going to, and we agree with this, we've said this, they're going to keep coming up with larger and more enormous events that will drive fear into you. Mainstream media will go along with it. So she says they need the AI because we have the numbers, and we've talked about them before. There are more people in the freedom side still. We have the numbers. Since there are more of us that believe in freedom and we have the numbers, that's one reason why they have to shut down free speech, take your money, destroy the middle class. We'll get into that in a minute. So before we go on to the next clip, create a technocracy, and then you control many more people, right? Clip 11.
Wow. Okay. See, that takes a big shift because, I mean, I definitely buy into a bad system of incentives. I do. But then I try and imagine a scenario whereby I'm trying to think there's a group of people who are looking at us peasants and thinking they need to control us. The best way to do it is to essentially eviscerate the middle class and
but they've been doing that, and the money has been
they
going
have been
up.
doing that. But I sometimes whether again, is that just the bad incentives? Like poor governments, election cycles mean that they have to keep printing, which drives
Yeah. But who designs those incentives and prevents them from being changed?
Oh, I just wonder if they're the incentives that are in us as humans. Like greedy people who are close to the spigot can print it for themselves, and then it has these outcomes. But maybe you're right.
But I think, how do people get into the elite? Not everyone that's in the elite today was born into it, right? I mean, they cultivate into their ranks people that are like, psychopaths, right?
Do you get a tap on the shoulder?
Controlled by greed and all of that stuff to come flesh it out, right?
So huge points. What do totalitarians want to do? Get rid of the middle class, eliminate the middle class, because the middle class has just enough money to be able to stand lawfully and peacefully against the upper class and represent themselves. But they've been wiping out, she says, and we agree, the middle class for decades and decades through the Fed and Wall Street. Through this inflation is wiping out. You can't spend $35 trillion and then you're going to pay for it at the kitchen table. How does that affect your life? You can't save. You don't have as much to start a business. And they benefit. Wiping out the middle class helps totalitarians. And it creates a hopelessness, right? Because if you can't get ahead and you believe you're always going to be treading water and you can never buy a home, you can never get ahead, you can never choose to have a family, that creates a hopelessness, making it that much better for the totalitarians who say, hey, don't worry, we'll just give you universal income and you can play your games and do whatever you want all day long. Again, the vast voluminous amount of regulations which impede your ability to create businesses as men, to start businesses, to compete efficiently with the other businesses. Let's go to clip 12.
In the next couple of years, without a doubt, there's going to be these events, whether it's like COVID or 9/11 or whatever, they're not going to be the same as those, but they're going to be these big events that generate a lot of fear and panic, and mainstream media is going to be traumatizing people with it, and then are going to sell a particular solution. And when it comes for the internet or the financial system, they're going to make the enemy privacy. They're going to make the enemy privacy 100%. And the solution is going to be digital IDs and programmable, surveillable money. It doesn't have to be CBDCs, by the way. I mean, CBDCs, I think most people know, are going to be that, but it doesn't. It's not just CBDCs. There is a goal. There is a push from the banks themselves, some of the most powerful banks in the world, to have, at least in some countries, a different system that's not a CBDC. Because with a CBDC, they can't do fractional reserve banking. And so that's what deposit tokens are all about. Tokenizing deposits, and you can make those programmable and you can surveil them. And it's really just like a CBDC, but they won't call it that. But then the bank controls all the reserves, and maybe they'll bank some of their reserves at the Fed or whatever, but they can still do fractional reserve banking and credit creation and all of this stuff, and not actually have to keep a one-to-one peg of reserves like CBDCs or like a fiat peg stable coin. And so there's a push for that too at an international level. It's not just in the U.S., but it's definitely happening in the U.S. And I would argue that's one of the reasons that you have the Federal Reserve, which is again owned by Wall Street banks in the U.S., being like, we're not going to do a direct issued CBDC, and freedom advocates in the U.S. are like, yeah, the Fed's on our side because of that. No, it's not.
So big events, and they will create more. So let's remember this happened during COVID. Big points. Government creates a problem. They make it worse with some kind of solution. It gets much worse. They want to do another solution. So here's the modus operandi of the powers that be in the government. They create a problem. The budget goes crazy, right? Medicare's only going to cost this much. Medicaid's only going to cost this much. But of course, it goes way up. Then they increase everybody's health care. Fact. Whatever they're involved in, government granted college loans. What happened? College education increased. All right. So the government creates a problem. Then they say, we'll fix it. We'll be nice and fix it. Acquiring, when accumulating, more power from them being involved. It's about power control. The government will reward itself with more power constantly. Look at their mess. They want more power, and they've got a $35 trillion, and we will say this repeatedly, $35 trillion of debt no one's gone to jail for in the government. Taking more and more of your freedoms away. Taking more of your talents away. Because you can't use your talents if you're impeded by the federal government spending $35 trillion as easily. The forever wars. Ukraine, we got to save Ukraine, protect Ukraine borders, but not American borders. Russia's the greatest threat of all time. Look over here, not internally in the government where we're causing all the problems and driving up your costs at the kitchen table up with inflation, with the money we're spending everywhere. Not just in wars, on entitlements and everything. The federal government is out of control. And how much of that is waste?